And we are back with a fun little discussion with some of our awesome developers who are involved in the development of our combat and classes and special effects, all the fun stuff that makes an MMO an MMO. First thing I want to ask is for you guys each to introduce yourselves. Start with you, Jim.
I'm Jim. I am the lead effects artist.
Yes. Trad?
Yep, I'm Trad Thompson. I'm a senior combat designer on the project.
Awesome. Keenan?
I'm Keenan. I'm a gameplay engineer. I mostly work on combat and movement.
So we have shown some fun stuff this year, and I think the audience, of course, would agree that the look at Ash's development since the start of 2022 has ramped up in a very fun and engaging way for the community to kind of take a look at how development works here. You guys all are involved in a process, of course, that is very near and dear to many players' hearts, which is the identity of their archetypes, the abilities they have access to, those classes, how they interact from a role perspective with combat in general in the game. What are some of the inspirations? What are some games that you guys have played in the past that kind of help to influence decisions that we make on Ashes?
Oh, that's a good question because I mean, if you're playing an MMO, you're going to have to think of kind of the big players out there. And I got thousands of hours in World of Warcraft.
Oh,
and
really?
that will definitely influence how I shape kind of some of the iconic imagery, the colors and shapes. I think really a lot of that motivation comes back to the feedback I get from the community and from the other developers.
Yeah.
Like Tread is always kind of saying, hey, man, what about this shape or this size? Or I'm thinking about this mechanic.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a circular
Absolutely.
thing.
Also, I'm really hoping that there is content to do late game, because like from what we've seen, it looks like a late game maybe, end game maybe a bit boring. But of course, we haven't seen much of Ashes, or I haven't seen too much, but overall, I think if they can find a way to perfectly balance the casuals and the people who are playing 24/7, this is the only game they're playing, then, they're going to have a really good game right there, right? Because everyone always wants an MMO to be balanced. Destiny these days feels like it's a bit more pushing towards the hardcore players. World of Warcraft seems like it's going towards casuals. And Final Fantasy has always been quite casual. You can be hardcore for all those hard mode raids and stuff. I forget what they're called. But Final Fantasy, they're leaned. So hopefully this one can find the perfect balance. That's what I'm hoping for, at least.
I mean, all of us have been experiencing MMOs. I mean, we're all MMO gamers. That's part of the question that I ask in the final interview when you come on board, Jim. What are your favorite MMOs?
The real qualifying.
Yes, the qualifying question. Trev, what are some MMOs or games in general you kind of draw inspiration from?
There are so many. I would have to narrow that down to. I'll pick an MMO since that's the most relevant.
Yeah.
But I'd say the most influential MMO on me, on just as a gamer, has been Dark Age of Camelot.
Oh,
I remember actually our interview when you asked me about like my MMO experience. That was the one I chose to talk about.
I loved Dayak. It was such a fun game.
Yeah, that was really the game I think that really, well, that and RuneScape. If you qualify RuneScape as an MMO, that one as well. But like Dark Age was really where I think I realized the magic of an MMO, and it really is what got me into like open world PvP, and that's what really excites me about this project, is bringing that kind of thing back. Just that really spontaneous gameplay that you run into out in the field, and you just never know what to expect.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Keenan?
For me, I think it's probably WoW.
Yeah.
Specifically, the re-release of Vanilla WoW, Classic WoW. I thought that was a phenomenal experience. I actually never played in Vanilla, so when I tried.
Really? So that was your first time with Classic?
That was my first time with Classic, and I feel like it brought back some of the old school adventure that a lot of us have been missing.
Back, the nostalgia.
Yeah, we've got a group playing right now.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, hopefully we'll start back up again on Old War.
I'm also hoping that AOC can bring back that feeling, right? Like, World of Warcraft, from what I hear, used to be really cool and like going off to explore and stuff, and then over time everyone just went more and more towards just get through the campaign, get through the quest, get geared up, get ready for the raids, and just over and over. You know, Dragonflight is a fantastic expansion. I love it. There feels like there's a lot to do. I mean, crafting orders, just all the little stuff they've added has really helped add that sense of adventure, especially dragon riding. Dragon riding, I can do it for a good maybe like 10-20 minutes just doing that, because it's just fun flying across the Dragon Isles. And honestly, normal flying feels weird now. Yeah, but hopefully AOC can bring that back.
Very cool. Yeah. So obviously, you know, as our audience has kind of seen throughout the year, and they're, you know, kind of seeing now as we put little clips into this particular video, you know, we've shown off a little bit of the Ranger, we've shown off a little bit of basic weapon attacks and melee, some of the fighter skills, we've shown off the Cleric most recently. Tell me a little bit about the process that goes into actually making these archetypes. Obviously, the ability side is very important. That needs to have support from engineering and VFX and stuff. But what typically goes into, and we have a lot of classes to make, right? And we're deep within the thralls of that process. But what does it take?
Yeah, I could start on that. So obviously, a class has to, or an archetype has to start on paper, right? You know, we don't, you know, a lot of the time we'll go into prototyping and start building out stuff and see what's fun, but just about always we start on paper, on a design document.
And we're talking about specific abilities when we start out on paper, right?
First, we actually go about establishing the class fantasy and the identity and the role within the party, right? Because that really helps to inform what those abilities then are. So that's usually the first step is, you know, what is this archetype? What identifies it? What is the role that it's trying to accomplish? Once that is done, then we go into what you're suggesting there, where, you know, we'll go and brainstorm a whole wide list of abilities and class mechanics. And then once we've got all those, you know, a lot of them will get the chopping block, and you know, some of them will make it through, some will get iterated and, you know, kind of redesigned, reimagined. And then after that step, usually we go to you and we have a sort of review meeting. And
honestly, I think that's really good, because, like, you know, this game feels like it's going to be very immersive, making you feel like you're really in the world, make sure the world feels alive and stuff, especially with the seasons. Seasons just go help make the world super alive, in my opinion, right? You know, seasons changing, stuff like that. We went over that in the last video. But getting the class fantasy and stuff done first, that's great in my opinion. You know, it drives towards, like, okay, well, this is the fantasy. What can we go off the fantasy to find abilities? Oh, okay, so maybe, you know, the fantasy is he raises the undead. Okay, have an ability where he raises, like, an army of undead monsters. You know what I'm saying?
And, you know, you'll pick ones that you like, you'll pick ones you want to change.
That's
or
the second chopping block.
The second shot, yeah, there you go. We try and filter it on our end as much as, but Steven makes sure it gets done one way or another. And then, you know, once that's done, then we jump into the prototyping, right?
And then it starts down the pipeline process, right?
Yeah, and rapid prototyping is a really important step of the design process for combat, because we want to build and fail early, or, you know, succeed early. And we find the fun, we find what's not fun, and we can all do that within, you know, the tools that our very talented engineers provide us, and we're always working to improve that stuff. And the better tools we have, the better the designers can then do their job.
And of course, engineering kind of fields requests from a capability standpoint on what design can actually provide a particular ability to do. Right? Talk to me a little bit about, you know, how you field those requests, how you incorporate that as part of the ability system, all those things.
Well, we always do feasibility on any requests that we get, but our designers are really good about that, and we don't usually have too many issues there. Usually. Yeah.
I like to run wild sometimes.
For me as an engineer, though, I think a lot of times the challenge is in, you know, they're trying to get the fantasy right, and the question is, like, how do you make somebody who's playing a game feel like they are being delivered on that fantasy? So when design asks us for something, we usually play it a lot ourselves as we're making it, and we search for that feeling. And we're all gamers, so we know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So we're looking for it as we build it.
That's one of my favorite things is I'm walking past your desk going to my office. Sometimes you'll just be like, hey, Steven, you got 2 minutes.
Yep.
And then you put me at your desk at the keyboard and you're like, how does this feel?
Yeah. Do you feel like a ranger?
I know. Do you feel like a ranger? Does this sword slash feel good? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and obviously, you guys, you and Adam have had a very instrumental hand as part of working with design and visual effects to kind of capture not just that role, but that feeling as you described. And sometimes that incorporates working with animators to get the right types of authored animations for like particular weapon.
I'm also hoping, because, we see some of the UI design based off where the health bar is. I'm really hoping we can either A, do add-ons like in World of Warcraft, because in World of Warcraft I have an add-on that puts the health bar right over all the enemies. I would love something like that. Or just allow, UI customization, right? Like, I really want to do that because enemy health bars were showing at the very top. Me, I don't want to have to take my eyes off the enemy and go, oh, okay, that's the health he's at. So hopefully we can move that around, right? Maybe I can do like enemy right there, put mine over here, and then put like allies over there. In my opinion, hopefully we can, but yeah.
Attacks and or abilities and the timing on those things is pivotal.
Hey, what's up, Terrago? I appreciate you stopping in, man. We're just watching the AOC combat section, providing thoughts.
Pivotal in creating the right feeling, right?
There's so many technical components to it, and as is often the case with engineering, it's like eliciting that right human response out of the very mathematical thing is the challenging part.
Yeah. And Jim, obviously, audio and visual effects, they come in kind of near the end of that pipeline where, design and engineering has provided the tools to design, design's iterating with authored animations, and then VFX comes in and says, how can I make this look spectacular?
I mean, there's a tremendous amount of thought that's already been placed into this mechanic or design or ability or whatever. So on top of that, we're thinking about how can we push the MMO space. We don't want to recreate the other games. We want to make it our own game.
Yes.
And we want to push the effects to a level that you just don't see in the industry, period.
Right.
But at the same time, we don't want to create visual effects soup. So we're working on creating a visual language, something that the gamers who are playing this are going to understand, like, hey, that's like an arcane ability, or that's like a tank mixed with this, summoner or whatever. So we have to figure out how to do all of this, not make it too muddy, but actually execute in a way that looks cool. So it's really, really nice to have people like Trad and our engineer team to go back and forth and be like, hey, can we connect this beam here? Can I parameterize it? And can we expose this to the UI guys so we can ramp it up or down to do stuff?
Yeah, and you hit on a really interesting point, which is visual effects is obviously not just about creating things that are awesome, but the language that communicates in the style guide of how these effects translate to particular classes from just a silhouette perspective, shape language, or visual fidelity in the hues and colors that are used to communicate at long distances like, hey, I know what I'm going up against, especially if it's a PvP scenario, or if you see your group kind of doing something, there are visual cues for you to respond appropriately and synergistically from a rotations perspective. And that's something I know early on, we worked with each other kind of going through you and the VFX team across, what those shape languages should look like for particular types of abilities, the colors that should be associated with particular types of archetypes, the symbologies and iconography that's used as part of those particular visual effects, some of which obviously people saw in the last Cleric demonstration. But how has that been for you, kind of defining those things and creating that style guide? I mean, it's a comprehensive list. There's 64 classes, right? And how do you steer, make sure that it doesn't become that visual suit that so many people...
64 classes is crazy, right? Like, no other MMO does that. Like, yeah, sure, Final Fantasy, they've got a lot of classes, but 64... I'm really hoping, here's what I'm really hoping, they do something similar to Final Fantasy, where we can change your weapons to change the class. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I would love something like that. That way I don't have to create all these alts. Cosmetics look awesome as well. Yeah, the armor is... New World does that too. Yeah. I tried New World, and I was kind of liking it. Should have honestly bought it while it was on sale, to be honest. And Splash, I played it off stream, not on. Sorry. Yeah, but the armor is looking good. I'm actually excited to play a healer for once. This Cleric class looks great, in my opinion. I'm loving how much crowd control abilities he has. And overall, very excited to see what Ashes has in store for us this year.
Well, I mean, I've played games where it does become Visual Soup.
Yes.
And especially it starts to break down every 10th player you add into the mix, or every 10th, actor or NPC or whatever, right? How do we accomplish that?
Oh, I love that question. So, I mean, I'm a gamer, and I think that especially in MMOs, when you get to that in-game content and you're in this huge...
I also really like how bright the ability is. Like, it makes it so easy to identify. Like, in World of Warcraft, if I'm running PvP, a lot of the times I'm like, did he pop an ability? And, I'm dead the next second. I didn't have any time to do anything, because, I can't really see that ability. I can't really see the, AoE he just placed. Cleric stuff and overall just abilities in general are looking nice and bright to where you can easily identify them. That way you don't get caught up in something like that.
Raid where there's like 10 people or 100 people, and all of a sudden it's like you can't find your mouse cursor. You're like, if you're not hotkeyed, you're lost, right? It's a
I
mess.
know.
So, but to answer your question, we're not.
Right.
Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to give that to the player. So the player is going to be able to tune that experience. Right. So we are going to create a very smart, parameterized subset of matrix particle systems.
Right.
That's a fancy way of saying that we're going to let you tune what it's like in single player versus maybe you and your buddy versus a 5-person party or a giant raid. Not only that, but let's make it to where we can change the camera shape and the post-process and the particle intensity, and then do a global one that scales all of those.
And give that to the player, because, I mean, really Visual Soup is a thing, but there's a scale that's subjective kind of to the player on how much they want to see of those things happening in a particular area. And this is something, obviously, you guys who've been following the project for a long time, is what we've talked at since the very inception of Ashes, is a desire to tackle that particular issue that many of us have experienced in other games, of course. So talk to me a little bit about our 64 classes, right? And those roles, those class fantasies. Where do we kind of live when incorporating, obviously we have an 8-member party, right? And we have 8 archetypes that are associated across our game. And people know it's kind of a matrix of 8x8 in which creating these classes, the augment system, all that type of stuff. People have just now been starting to get a peek under the hood of the creation of these archetypes and these classes. What are you most excited to kind of tackle come 2023? I know that there's a lot of stuff in the works right now and building up towards Alpha 2.
Of all 64 of them.
Yes.
Probably the Dreadnought, because that's my default character. But actually, I don't know that there's any particular class.
It does. I'm loving the world. Like, honestly, the world just gives you that spooky feeling when it wants it to feel spooky. Like, World of Warcraft, sure, I love WoW, right? But the world, for me, doesn't spark too much joy. Like, there's, very few zones where I'm like, wow, this is incredible. First time seeing Valdrakken, I got a screenshot, right? I thought Valdrakken looked awesome. And just a few other places, but overall, Ashes just looks great. I mean, Seasons is going to allow those places to also change over time, so it's different every part of the year. Overall, Ashes is just going to be incredible as long as they don't drop the ball. I hope they don't. I really hope.
Class yet. I mean, we haven't even shown everybody all the archetypes yet. But I will say I'm pretty excited to see what the Summoner becomes.
Yeah.
We haven't shown anything on the Summoner, and I'm not necessarily a pet class player myself, but I feel like every Summoner type class that I've seen in games, they usually fall a little bit flat, in my opinion. Maybe that's why I don't play them, right? But I would like to see something a little bit more dynamic with like, summoning in real time in combat rather than, oh, I summon my pet right at the beginning of combat and then it's done. It's out there doing its own thing.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot left to be explored.
That sounds great. That sounds, because, like, when I think of Hunter, World of Warcraft, it has its little pet. Death Knight has its little minion, and, of course, Unholy has the Gargoyle and the Army of the Dead move that summons a bunch of dead, like, zombies. And, that's nice, fast, but it's a melee class. But a summoner class that keeps it nice, fluid, you don't have to back out of combat to summon your minions. That sounds like it could be really fun and actually encourage players to play that class.
There, and I'm pretty. In fact, we've already written up some stuff about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and
but
it's some stuff that we've shared a little bit with the community and
Just a
write-ups,
little
so
bit.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be excited to see next year, kind
Yep.
of some of the stuff that's gone into that. What about you, Kina? What are you kind of excited about from either a technical challenge perspective when it comes to these ability systems, or combat in general, or class-wise?
I think if you're talking about what I'm most excited to work on,
Yes.
I would say all of the Bard classes.
Ah, okay.
I think that the Bard seems to have been largely forgotten by modern gaming.
I
So I'm
agree.
excited to bring it back and show off some of the cool ideas that we have.
Yes, I think next year as well, people are going to be excited to see how that class interacts from a support perspective for the party, and how it kind of lives next to but doesn't encompass the same space as the healer, which is what a lot of previous games, I think, that try to bring in that bard perspective do. They just throw it on top of the healer's role,
Yep.
And that can be a little bit boring.
There's a lot
Yeah.
more to support than Health Bar goes right.
Right? Health bar goes right.
Okay, so it sounds like, healers and supports are going to be a lot more than just, like they said, health bar go right. Sounds like, because in WoW, right, healers don't do much outside of heal and, do their damage here and there. But man, if they can, like, apply different buffs, debuff, and just have different ways to support, that's going to make healing a fun thing to do. Because World of Warcraft, I don't care about healing, right? I stick to my Death Knight, I stick to my DPS. But this sounds like healing could actually be made fun and enjoyable. Overall, just sounds awesome.
Whack-a-mole buffs. yeah.
Agreed. How about you, Jim? What about you on the visual effects side? I know you guys got a lot of fun tech working with tech art teams for supporting visual effects, not just from a class perspective, but also on the monster side, NPC encounter side as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're gonna have so much fun. Like, monsters and boss fights are gonna be unreal because we can just dial that up and really have fun with all the actual tech that's built in the engine, the custom tech. I think from just a real technical perspective,
Yeah.
I'm super excited about augments. I want to do the augmentations
yes.
and see how these different classes interact and how we can create like the difference between a cleric and a paladin, for
Right.
example. But from just a selfish point of view,
Yeah.
all about the necromancer, man. That is going
Oh,
to be
man.
incredible.
All right, I'm sold, bro. Necromancer, I'm sold. Dude, they keep talking about all these classes, and I'm like, yo, how would that play? How would that play? And overall, the Ashes team just doing a fantastic job. Loving it. I mean, Necromancer, they're gonna make Bard a fun class. Pull it out of that whole just health bar go right stereotype. This, if it does what it says it will become one of the top 3 MMOs, right? Like, it will be up there with FF14 and WoW, in my opinion. You can quote me on that, by the way.
I don't think you're alone there, buddy.
Wait to work on that. It's going to be amazing.
And
I'm
we
really
showed
excited.
off a little bit some of the augments. I don't know if everyone picked up on them during some of the demonstrations. There were a few abilities that had some of the augments associated with them. But next year, I think, in preparation for Alpha 2, there's going to be a lot of that stuff that players are going to get access to and kind of see. It's something that's interesting to me is I think next month we're showcasing the tank archetype, and we're going to be showing some of those abilities. And within the next I might have actually just leaked that. I'm so sorry.
All right, quick little comment. If we're being honest, someone was probably gonna leak it, right? Like that reminds me of Shadowlands reveal when Ian brought up how data miners have probably already seen it, so you guys have probably already seen this when they revealed Shadowlands, and it was hilarious, right? Like just straight up saying, yeah, we know you people data mine, we know you've already seen this, but here it is for real.
Okay, so a little leak in today's video, but
Keep rolling.
within it, I know, keep going. Within the next couple months, or I think it's the next 2 to 3 months, we're also going to be talking a little bit about and showcasing one of the big raid bosses, the Cyclops. And
Dude, they're doing everything! Bro, earlier in the video, I was worried about endgame content, and now they're going to be showcasing one of the raid bosses. I am sold on this game. I am sold. Honestly, I am very excited to be making content for AOC. This is going to be a great game.
I know that has a lot of visual effects that's going into that encounter, as well as some unique mechanics that are associated with supporting some of that ability that the
okay.
actual Cyclops has available. And I think people are going to be a little bit shocked by that because it's pretty cool.
Well, it's going to be epic.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be insane. I mean, you have this unique problem with big bosses in general.
Yes.
Now have I'm going to leak a little more. Hopefully, you guys don't have to edit
Oh
this
yeah,
out.
no, I'm ready. I'm scared.
So,
but I'm ready.
so we're going to have this monstrous creature just going across our terrain. It's not going to be your flat arena that you see in every MMO. It's going to have different heights, altitudes, obstacles to climb on, and we got to solve for that. We don't want our effects just hanging in there. We want to mold to the terrain and do different stuff. So I think that's going to be something that I'm really excited about. It's really technical, but it's also going to be something that people are really going to dig. They're going to enjoy it.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree.
Every little edge case we missed is going to be scaled up 20x.
Oh yes, and that's part of the greatness
Yeah.
of kind of showcasing.
That's how we
these
figure it
things.
out.
Yes, exactly. Is we get to encounter those problems as the course that we're bringing this to life, and as we're addressing them, we're showing the community as well, right? That's something that's super cool. Another thing, obviously we're building a massively multiplayer game, and a lot of our encounter design, a lot of the PvP scenarios that players are going to be subjected to, those are very dense populations. And when you're building out this concept of these ability systems, how much of that massively multiplayer component gets taken into account when ideating, so to speak, these mechanics that are provided by engineering, but also the class kits as a holistic view, what abilities we're actually authoring? Do you take into that account, or is this, something that's really more focused around solo gameplay, group gameplay, or massive gameplay?
Oh, we've got to think about all of it,
Absolutely.
right? From the ground up in that phase I was talking about earlier, like the ideation phase when we're brainstorming these abilities, we always have to think about how does this scale up, right? A lot of games have the luxury of not having to do that. They can design a number of abilities without even having to necessarily consider the performance implications it would have in a networking environment. There's a lot of additional things as designers and engineers and artists that we've got to think about every time. So it kind of blows up the scale of, it gives you, it can be a little bit mind paralysis sometimes when you're thinking, but we get through it, and we've gotten pretty good at it.
From a performance as authoring kind of these visual effects, how useful has the migration over to Unreal 5 been with the use of Niagara and its system?
Oh, it's key. It's very critical. So every single effect that we author, we have to author for different scenarios. How far away it might be, we might cull stuff, how close it's going to be. We're also going to cull stuff.
Right.
There's no point in having something that just blocks your entire view.
Yeah.
So all this will happen like in real time dynamically. So we can scale down particle systems based on how many players are active, or how your performance might be changing, or anything really.
Right.
Maybe it's a Thanksgiving Day and we want to have less effects. We can do that. So it's super robust with the amount of control we have over every aspect of visual effects.
Right.
I'm also loving, from what we're seeing from the cleric, just how cool casting a spell is, or casting one of his abilities is, right? Like World of Warcraft, they'll put their hands together and then, wah, fireball, or summon. You know, they're actually putting in a lot of visual effects, so you really know, oh, okay, here comes the AoE. Oh, okay, he's casting heal. Better dive in, try and interrupt that. You know, it's overall just going to make a great game and going to add a lot, in my opinion.
And we'll be needing to do all of that to set all these things up, because we don't want to have a situation where, hey, our game is really great until we got into the open
Right.
world PvP now
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So we're not going to make this, the effect should be there, but it shouldn't be, that's all you see.
Right, it's complementing absolutely the mechanics and the gameplay, 100%. Keenan, now obviously on the engineering side, the gameplay engineering side, you of course have to field these requests for different types of mechanics that need to be authored. But when you think about performance-related considerations for the ability systems, stats to kind of quickly update, all of the stuff interacting with the network, how has that been for you from a challenging standpoint?
Yeah. With the scalability requirement cranked to 10, it pretty much makes every aspect of combat like 3 times harder than it would otherwise be.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we've got a handle on it, and we've been very intentional with our data and with our systems, so that we can modulate how quickly they receive and send updates
Right.
based on who cares the most.
Yeah.
And so that's going to help us with scalability a lot.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of players kind of were noticing in Alpha 1 last year, was just the sheer density that was achieved during some of the Castle Siege fights that we had, where there were 300 plus players in a particular area. Not many people, I think, in today's age have experienced that, and experienced in a way that was performant, right? And that was something that I think is wholly unique.
In my opinion, from what we're seeing from like all this castle and stuff, it feels like you're definitely really going to want to join a guild or get with some buddies. Me personally, I don't have any friends that are into MMOs. Hopefully, when the game comes out, you know, you and me, Tergo, we can run stuff. You know, maybe get our own little guild going. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. That way I can have some people to play with. Yeah, but it definitely does seem like a big community-focused game, and I'm all for that, right? Like, big old castle sieges, like having you and the guildmates roll up and storm a castle, that's awesome. And just, yeah. I think it'll be hard if you're a single player, but it will be doable.
To this project and what we're trying to achieve and accomplish, not just from the combat's perspective and these class kits that we're creating, but how they harmonize with many players in a particular area. So you guys have been doing an awesome job on that. Well, thank you guys for joining us and talking a little bit about what it takes to make this magic come to life. I think I speak on behalf of the community. You guys are doing an awesome job, and not just you, of course, the teams that work in association with you and that you're a part of. We're really appreciative of that.
Okay, so we're done with the combat stuff. Just go over my quick thoughts real quick. Combat is going to be really good, you know. It's going to be easy to tell when someone like the cleric's casting stuff. It's going to be easy to tell what a spell is, stuff like that. Raiding castles, going to be great. And it feels very community focused. And, you know, I have no problem against that. Like I said, hopefully me and Tergo or some other people can team up, make a guild, or find a guild. And, yeah, I think Ashes will do fantastic as long as they don't drop the ball. Yeah, Ashes will be great. And we'll probably react to the Gathering and Crafton another time.